My name is Sunny. I'm one of the co-founders of UnoCoin. We're India's leading Bitcoin company. So, it's kind of hard to talk about Bitcoin unless you talk about money. And so before 3 years ago, before we founded UnoCoin, I had a chance to work for a robotics company where I was heading BD, and I literally got to travel all over the world. And the one thing I discovered is that when you go from like city to city or country to country, people speak different languages, they have different religious beliefs, different political beliefs, there's different skin color, people dance differently, they eat differently. But the one common denominator that I found is money, right? And usually, everybody around the world loves money. And whenever you mention the word money, most people just start paying attention. They put their phones away and they're like, hey, there's something important about to happen. But to my surprise, what I found is that when you ask people the question, what is money? In my experience, even CEOs of banks kind of look at you and they're like, they just don't know. So I find it really amazing that we wake up really early in the morning, we go to bed late at night, we go to school for like 20 years of our lives just to earn money. We get into divorces, we have wars, but nobody knows what money is, right? So today I want to just start, before I even get into my presentation, talking a little bit about the history of money. So like 100,000 years ago, before there was like money, what did people do? The thing that I was taught in school, I was taught that people would barter, right? So I would, let's say, have a cow and you would have rice and we'd just trade it and everything would be fine. But let's just do a thought experiment. Let's think about how that would actually work. So let's say I'm in the middle of a forest and I just killed like a caribou for my family, right? I'm gonna go feed them and I see John. John comes up to me. What are the odds that in that moment that I've just killed this caribou in the middle of a forest or jungle that John just happens to have the exact amount of rice that I need and I'm gonna have exactly what he needs? The chances are probably pretty small. So what ended up actually happening is people didn't have ledgers. They didn't have a form of money. What they did is they just remembered in their head what would happen. So I would literally just, if I liked John, I'd give him some caribou. If I didn't, I wouldn't. And I would remember that. And it was a subjective ledger that was used for years and years and years until people in different tribes started realizing that, hey, you know what, maybe we should start using, things like seashells, right? Why don't we use just different things as a form of money. And what ended up happening is we started having kind of like these objective ledgers now emerge between different tribes. But the problem would be that let's say my tribe is using seashells and your tribe is using something else, how would we trade between tribes? And so about 5 to 10,000 years ago, the first universal ledger emerged, which is gold, right? And if you notice, the common theme between all this is that, you went from a subjective ledger to an objective ledger to a universal ledger. And then what happened is eventually, we've got this new reserve, we have this new system that's based on gold, and then eventually, they removed that gold standard as well, and now we have the system we have today. So that brings us to Bitcoin. So what is Bitcoin? I know we're at a Bitcoin conference, but I haven't really heard anyone define what is Bitcoin, so I'm going to try and do it. So Bitcoin is essentially the world's first open source, decentralized digital currency and payment network. So the reason most people find it very confusing is because it's two things in one. It's both a currency, kind of like dollars, rupees, or gold, right? It goes up and down in value. When I first learned about Bitcoin 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, each Bitcoin was maybe $5 or $10. Today, I think it's around 1,000. So there's that element, and then there's another element where it's essentially a payment network, analogous to Western Union, PayPal, Visa. There are rails for moving value from one point to another. And because these two things are kind of combined into one, it's sometimes a little bit hard to understand what Bitcoin really is. But the way I explain it is that if the internet and money came together and had a baby, it would essentially be called Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, another great way to explain it, right, is that Bitcoin is essentially like gold, very similar to gold, has similar properties. We'll talk about it in the next slide. But it's also like gold with a teleporter where you can literally zap it to any other human being at the click of a button instantaneously and for almost free. So why do we say that Bitcoin is similar to gold? What is it about gold? What are the natural properties of gold that made it perfect as a form of money for thousands and thousands of years? Well, number one, it was fungible, right? So meaning if I have, let's say, $1 and you have $1, I can trade them for one another, and it's worth the same. Or if I have an ounce of gold and you have an ounce of gold. Durability, right? So gold is very durable. It's not like it just doesn't disappear, right? You can put it in a vault. It's impossible to forge or very difficult to forge. You've got a predictable supply. I think a speaker yesterday spoke about the importance of having an inelastic supply, which I really enjoyed. Portability, right? It's if I want to buy some bread at the grocery store, it doesn't make sense for me to carry a big, piece of metal to the store. It's better if I have something portable. And then last but not least, it's global in nature. And if you look at Bitcoin, it essentially has all of these properties baked into it. Not to mention, the fact that over the last 4 or 5 years, it's literally gone up thousands of percent. I mean, I used to be a financial advisor like a long time ago. Like you'd be selling people like 10% a year, and people would be like, "Oh, that's amazing!" Like this is thousands of percent, and we only have like 50 people in this room. So why is Bitcoin transformative? So the 3 major reasons that we believe Bitcoin is transformative, and the other quote I really liked yesterday was that maybe the killer application for Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Right? Everyone's out there looking for something different. Maybe it's just Bitcoin. So number 1, it's a great store of value. It's volatile, but I'll talk a little bit later about what things that we're doing as a company to help mitigate against that. But even if Bitcoin took, let's say, 1% of the gold market, that would be a tremendous upside. E-commerce is a $1 trillion market, right? And then remittance. So many of you might not know, but India is not only the largest gold market in the world, right? In fact, Indian women own more gold than the United States government. Also, you've got the fact that India is the largest inward remitter in the world, right? Close to $100 billion a year just comes into India alone. And when you have companies taking 10%, 15%, when you have people like my father from Canada sending money back to, let's say, India, my grandmother, if she's being sent $100, she's only getting maybe $75 or $80, and it takes a week for her to get it. So that's a lot of, food money that just kind of goes to waste. So we think these are the 3 main areas. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but many of you already might know how Bitcoin works, and so I'll skip over this. But if anyone's interested, we can go over it later. So again, now there's no surprise. Some of the smartest, brightest people in the world have called Bitcoin a technical tour de force. Even Al Gore said he's a big fan of Bitcoin, and they just keep coming in. So now I want to just shift gears a little bit. That was more about Bitcoin. I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin in the context of India. And so once again, the name of our company is UnoCoin, and we're India's Bitcoin industry pioneers. We recently just closed a round of financing from, in my view, some of the best investors in the space. So Barry Silbert, who leads DCG, invested in our company. We came out of Boost, which is led by the Drapers. Max Kaiser, I'm going to do an interview with him soon. We've got Funders Club and Bank of the Future and all these great companies or investment firms supporting us now. So what do? So we essentially make it easy for people in India to buy, use, and accept Bitcoin. And we obviously allow you to sell Bitcoin, but these are the 3 kind of main core functions that we focus on because there's a lot of people trying to buy Bitcoin right now. Now, our mission as a company is to bring Bitcoin to billions of people. And we think that, in the next 10 years or so, that's definitely a possibility. And our vision is to make money simple. See, I don't get why I can do a FaceTime call with my friend, across the world, but if I want to send them, let's say, 10 cents for a tweet that I really liked or a blog post, I can't do it, right? Until Bitcoin, of course, right? So we think that our goal really is to just simplify money. We think it's overly complicated, and like I said, I spent about 3 or 4 years in the financial services, and the thing that I walked away with was that there's a lot of people who dress really nicely, they wear fancy suits, they use big words, but most of them don't understand math, right? When you actually boil it down, there's like some real big problems in the financial system. So when we talk to investors, right, one of the big things that they always care about, and if any of you are trying to raise money, I would highly recommend that you spend a lot of time thinking about the market size. Okay, so I'm not saying UnoCoin's going to win, but if we win, what is the potential market that we can take, right? So if we start at the bottom of this, right, so we're a Bitcoin company, right, that's what, a $5 billion? I see this slide's a little bit outdated. I think it's a $15 billion market cap now, globally, right? You've got e-commerce, we talked about that. In India alone, it's about $12.5 billion. Digital gold, right, so $500 billion in gold that people are investing in India, right? And so we think even if we take a sliver of that market with Bitcoin, and we believe that Bitcoin's far better than gold, right, in so many ways, mainly because it's gold with a teleporter on it, that's a very exciting space. Next, there's remittance. So literally, as we speak, you probably heard Bitwage, Jonathan, speak on the first day. So they're a partner of ours. We're working with them to facilitate remittance into the country where neither the sender nor the receiver really are troubled by Bitcoin, right? So we just make it so that Bitcoin is a rails and it's in the background, but all they know is they get their money faster and they get more money than they would have gotten from any other means. Mobile, right? So we just, at UnoCoin, we just launched our Android and and our iPhone app less than maybe 2 months ago, and already more than 10% of our volume, maybe 15% of our volume comes from our mobile. So mobile is a big, big deal in India. And then last but not least, the reason that I'm super passionate, so you might be able to tell from my accent that I was actually born and raised in this part of the world. I was from Canada originally. But I've been going to India every year, and it's really sad to see that there's a lot of people in this world, literally like half of India almost, that don't have access to, they don't have a way to get money from anywhere around the world. So let's say somebody has a cousin in New York that wants to send them $50 so they can go grocery shopping. It's just not feasible because a wire transfer would cost you maybe 25, right? So it would take a long time. So our longer term vision is really to help bank the unbanked. And we believe that even though it hasn't quite happened yet, we think that Bitcoin has in it what we would need to make that happen. So just from a bird's eye view, there's 1.3 billion people. 1 out of every 7 humans on Earth live in India, right? It's a massive market. We have over 150,000 users in less than 3 years. We're adding about 10 to 15,000 users a month. We have about 127,000 completed orders, and we've done about $36 million in volume in terms of buying and selling. So our solution is essentially we have we call ourselves a leading Bitcoin company. We have a whole bunch of different services that kind of connect to our buy-sell platform. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what I believe makes us unique. So number one, well before we even started UnoCoin, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, we started the first Bitcoin meetups. I don't know if you guys are familiar with meetup.com, but if you go to India today and you type meetup.com/India Bitcoin, there's like nearly 3,000 people there. And literally what we started doing, and again, if any of you are interested in starting your own businesses, I highly recommend doing this. It costs $10 a month. You can get a Meetup account, and you can literally invite people from around you to come and meet once a month. And that was critical. Why? Because to build a business or to do anything impactful, you can't just do it by yourself. You need to work with other people. And so through these meetups and whatnot, really early on, we started networking. We started meeting people that were doers, right? And I met my business partners, Satvik and Harish and Abhinand, all through these meetups. And so whether it's like in the news, whether it's doing conferences, we've kind of been leading the charge, whether it's going to universities and educating students about it. That's, I would say, really at the top. Number two, we focused a lot of time and energy. In India, things like design are sometimes overlooked, right? So we looked at our UX, we looked at our user experience. We wanted to make it better than anything else in the world. We also offer 24/7 customer service. You can call us any time of the day, right? Which is pretty unique for a Bitcoin company. And then third, last but not least, so a lot of people ask about the regulatory scene in India, right? So today, Bitcoins are not regulated in India. Even the government said they're waiting and watching. But that doesn't mean that, we haven't spoke to them. In fact, I think maybe 3 days after we launched, we had 30 people from the government come to our front door, right? And they essentially, they interrogated us, asked us a bunch of questions about how we're running our business. But because we're running it in a way that's, we're with like in an adult-like way. We're not just cowboys where we're not, where we don't know who we're dealing with or anything of that sort. We don't touch things like cash. We only deal with bank transfers. They looked at our systems and they said, you know what, this is okay for now. And then over the last 3 years, we also have a law firm that we work with, and I'll share a little bit more later, but Nishit Desai has been critical in helping us kind of carve this path. So again, our history, so we literally had the idea back in August 2013 to launch UnoCoin, and today, like I said, we have over 150,000 users. We're growing between 20 to 30% month over month. So we also have if you guys are familiar with BitPay or Coinbase, we have a similar kind of merchant processing arm. So today in India, you can, happy to say, you can go on to Sapna Book House, which is the biggest bookstore in India, and buy books. You can go to, you can top up your phone, you can buy flight tickets, bus tickets, like you name it, right? You can pretty much do it now in India, and then we just keep growing on that front. Everyone's talked a little bit about security today, so maybe let's skip to this. So I want to share a quick story, and just so I know how much time we have. Actually, I don't think we have a lot more time left. But this is our law firm, Nishit Desai. They actually did a 2-year techno-legal analysis. And our law firm, just for your information, so Nishit Desai was responsible for essentially the creation of NASSCOM, which is a regulatory body for all the IT companies in India. They also essentially they made e-commerce and payment processing possible in India. 40 or 50% of the investments that happen in India today are because of their firm. So they've been doing a lot of research, and they've identified that, Bitcoins are not illegal per se in India. But what you do with Bitcoins, could be, right? In fact, this is the former governor, so the the Janet Yellen of India, right? Raghuram Rajan. And some of you may or may not have heard of him. He's a really interesting guy, and he's even said things like, over time, we believe that something like Bitcoin will be a form of transaction. And I've got a link to a YouTube video I can show you guys later. So I wanted to leave at least a minute or two for questions, but yeah, so I'll open it up to you guys. Any questions?
What's going on with the rupee right now?
Okay, so I knew someone would ask. So what happened about 3 months ago is so just to step back, so 86% of the currency that was in circulation, so they're the 500 rupee note and the 1,000 rupee note. So the 500 rupee note is equivalent to about $10, 1,000 rupee note is equivalent to about $20. The government, or the prime minister one day, literally just made an announcement saying that, like, as of now, every currency note, so the 500 rupee and the 1,000 rupee note, are no longer valid. And the only way to validate it is to essentially bring in whatever cash you have to the banks, show them that you've paid, your taxes on it, and then to replace it with the new notes. And this whole thing it's been referred to as demonetization. And as you can imagine, in a place like India, where cash is very important, right, for a lot of the poor people, it's had both, I'd say, like, mixed reviews, right? So you've heard probably some of the horror stories of literally, like, I've heard more than 100 people died standing in ATM lines. Like, you look on Reddit or YouTube, you'll see, like, literally, like, you'll see, like, hundreds and hundreds of people lining up at the ATM trying to get their own money out. And because many of them can't and whatnot, they just, anyways, it's not a pleasant situation. But what we've noticed is, we didn't expect that there would be a huge influx of volume, like, right away. We actually, because when something like this happens, it's kind of a shock, and people are thinking not about Bitcoin or whatever, they're thinking about food. But we did believe that the long-term effects would be positive for Bitcoin at least, right? And we're starting to see that now. So like I said, we had maybe 3 months ago, before the announcement of the demonetization, we had maybe 5,000 visitors a day come into our site. Last I checked, we're doing about 15,000 visitors now, so in less than 2 or 3 months. That's quite a peak. But yeah, that's a little bit about demonetization. But anyways, thank you all for your time, and yeah, talk to you later.